It's difficult to see any company releasing its first smartphone generating the kind of buzz as Nothing has for the Phone 1, yet hype may be a double-edged sword. The trickle of teases undoubtedly increased interest and anticipation, and the 100,000 plus individuals who signed up for the phone's waitlist demonstrate that it converted into sales, but has it put undue pressure on a device that is, ultimately, just a phone? Perhaps, but it helps that Nothing has the phone part down pat. The phone may first not be life-changing or a radical departure from industry conventions as founder Carl Pei would have you believe, but it is a well-specified, reasonably priced phone that provides outstanding value for money. But from a company that promised to upend the smartphone as we know it, is being very good enough? Let's start with what makes the Nothing phone unique. 1. While this appears to be a standard phone from the front, turning it around reveals something unexpected. One example is the semi-transparent design. Whether you choose the white or black version, the phone is coated in glass, but behind that is a multi-layered and textured design meant to hint at the components underneath. Despite the promise of transparency, there are no visible chips or circuitry here, only a central circle indicating the phone's wireless charging coil, a winding strip for a connector, and visible screws indicating the phone's manufacturing. After you've gotten over the transparency, the phone smacks you again with the glyph interface. That's the term for Nothing's distinct pattern of white LED strips in the rear design. These are not only cosmetic. They can do simple things like flash in time with ringtones and notifications, but they can also illuminate to show progress while charging the phone, and there's even a setting in the camera app to activate all of them at once as a makeshift fill light. I like the novelty of the lights, but that's all they are. Nothing's pitch is partly that the lights can be used to filter out non-urgent messages, as you can assign patterns to specific contacts or apps, but you can achieve the same effect with an always-on display. The attractiveness will also be determined by how comfortable you are with setting your phone display down, which is an excellent method to damage the screen. Nothing includes a pre-applied screen protector with the Phone 1 to limit the possibilities of damage to the glass panel itself, but if you're going to leave it face down, you'll probably need to invest in a few replacements or a case with a visible lip. The rest of the design of the Phone 1 is less outrageous, but no less stunning. Its squared-off sides are reminiscent of the current iPhones, but the use of aluminum to construct the frame keeps the phone light enough despite its bulk. There is also good durability. The phone's front and back are constructed of Gorilla Glass 5, not the strongest type available, but scratch-resistant enough. There's also an IP53 rating, which guarantees dust and water resistance. The Nothing Phone 1 has a 6.55 inches screen, which is about typical for an Android phone in terms of size. With 120Hz OLED technology, it's slightly above average in terms of display quality, while similarly priced rivals with similar panels are certainly available. It's bright and colorful, with appealing colors and HDR10+ support. The 120Hz refresh rate improves the fluidity of animations throughout the experience, but it only accelerates to full speed when necessary. You may also set it to 60 Hz to save battery life. Looking at the phone from the front, the black bezel around the borders is slightly broader than you might be used to, but nothing has been done to make it completely symmetrical, with the same width on both sides. It's a small detail, but it speaks to the phone's obsession with design. To moderate my enthusiasm, I've been dealing with a recurring technical issue with the screen. The phone has been cutting out blue light at random intervals, resulting in abrupt and jarring alterations in the white balance of the screen, at times flipping between the two every few minutes. I've spoken with Nothing about the problem, and the business says it's not aware of the problem elsewhere, so this could be a unit-specific issue. Still, you can see the effect in my images, which were taken while the phone insisted on an orange tint, explaining why the display seems washed out and flat. In terms of audio, there is no headphone jack, therefore you must use wireless or USB-C headphones. However, the stereo speakers are adequate. They're quite loud and clear. Phone speakers are phone speakers, after all, although these are far superior to most other mid-range phones. The Snapdragon 778G Plus, a mid-market chipset released in October of last year, powers the Nothing Phone 1. This chip, more than anything else, explains the Phone 1's mid-range price, as it is both a tier below the flagship Snapdragon 8 series and getting a touch old. It has subsequently been replaced by the Snapdragon 7 Generation 1. But I don't want to overestimate the drawbacks. Sure, If you're hoping to use your phone for competitive online gaming, the 778G Plus may be a hindrance, but it's powerful enough for practically anything else you can throw at it. Benchmark performance is solid and usual for the pricing. It compares favorably to the OnePlus Nord 2T and outperforms Samsung's underpowered Galaxy A53. In use, I've found the phone to be speedy and responsive, with little latency. In short, it's fast enough but not remarkable. The 778G Plus comes with 8GB or 12GB of RAM and 128GB or 256GB of storage, though keep in mind that the cheaper 8 plus 128GB model is only available in black, not white. The Phone 1 has a 4500 mAh battery, which is another attribute that is essentially average. However, I feel it has been poorly optimized, as the battery life is clearly below average. This phone has a battery life of around a day, but I wouldn't push it too hard, and I've had it run out on me once. As is always the case with phones, this will only worsen over time. The limited battery may be due to the glyph lighting, but I doubt it since the phone itself attributes the majority of its power waste to the display, which is standard. Nothing claims that even turning every light on full for 10 minutes, a fairly intensive use case, consumes only 0.5% of the battery capacity, so the glyph impact appears to be minor. The good news is that if the extra lights aren't to fault, nothing may be able to fine-tune the phone's battery consumption with software adjustments and upgrades. The phone can charge at up to 33 watt, which I found was adequate to restore 67% of the battery in half an hour. That's speedier than most phones from Samsung, Apple, or Google, but it lags well behind phones from Xiaomi, OnePlus, and others, even at this low price. It may not help that nothing has decided to follow the recent practice of shipping the phone without a charger. That is certainly more environmentally responsible, but it will be inconvenient if you don't already have a USB-C charger and need to get one. The Phone 1 does have wireless charging, which supports the popular Qi standard at up to 15 watt, as well as reverse wireless charging to charge your headphones and other devices. This is one of the phone's most notable features, with the iPhone SE being the only competitively priced phone with it. That implies that if you're an Android user who despises wires, the Phone 1 is the cheapest option. The camera is arguably the main feature that nothing has pushed the most, and in a way that many competitors have not. It's becoming more typical for phones at this price to have 3 or even 4 cameras on the back, but usually only one of them is usable. Nothing, on the other hand, has only 2 rear camera lenses, one main and one ultra-wide. Neither is flagship quality, but they're both capable for the budget, with a noticeable drop-off at night. The main lens employs a 50-megapixel Sony IMX766 sensor, which can be found in phones ranging from mid-range rivals such as the OnePlus Nord 2T to top-tier flagships such as the Oppo Find X5 Pro. In most lighting circumstances, it's bright, punchy, and capable of producing some pretty appealing photos. There's even enough information to make the 2x digital zoom option worthwhile. Support for optical image stabilization allows the main camera to perform adequately in low light, albeit much below flagship standards. This is where software and camera algorithms shine, and it's no wonder that nothing isn't competing with the big dogs here. Light sources will still be blown out, and most night mode images will be soft despite the OIS, but the phone will pick out details that would otherwise be lost in darkness. The glyph interface fill light can also be used as a less forceful alternative to a flash for close-up nighttime photographs. The effects were a touch harsh for me, but it beats flash and is a nice extra alternative to have for portraiture or food photographs in poorly lit restaurants. The ultra-wide is another option. Although it is a 50-megapixel camera, it does not use the same Sony sensor. Instead, it uses Samsung's JN1 image sensor, and the quality is noticeably lower when compared to the main camera. When compared to the main lens, shots from this camera appear washed out and faded, however you may like the more subdued tones. There's also a more obvious decline at night, with details often lost in a hazy smear. It's not a bad lens, and it's still better than most rivals' ultra-wides, but don't expect it to equal the main camera. The 16-megapixel selfie camera was the biggest surprise for me. On paper, it's nothing exceptional, but I found that images were adequately exposed and nicely illuminated, and that the portrait mode did a good job of subject identification. There are no complaints here. In terms of video, both rear lenses can capture at up to 4K at 30 frames per second, but the front camera is limited to 1080 at 30 frames per second. The video settings are basic and very standard, but there is a welcome option to switch on a flashing red LED on the back of the camera when recording, another amusing touch. This is also where the glyph interface fill light option shines, offering extra lighting that vloggers will love, but be cautioned, the end effect is faint, and not on the level of a true ring light. The Phone 1 comes pre-installed with Android 12 and the simply titled Nothing OS on top. If you tried out the phone's launcher's public beta a few months before its debut, you've already seen the most of what the company's unique Android skin has to offer. The majority of the new features are a few unique wallpapers, minimalist clock and weather widgets, and a retro-styled audio recording software. You can also enlarge specific program icons or folders, and there are built-in controls for the company's Ear 1 earbuds if you own them. The remaining integrations are less enticing. Tesla owners reportedly get access to shortcuts for controlling their vehicles, while NFT enthusiasts can display their monkey photos in a dedicated NFT gallery. Those features reveal something about the market to which Nothing is attempting to attract, but they may also turn off the rest of us. Fortunately, if you're not interested, they're easy to ignore. The main issue is that the program still needs some tweaking. When I reviewed the Ear 1 at launch, I encountered numerous errors, and while the Phone 1 software appears to be more reliable, it is not without flaws. For one thing, while you can assign specific glyph LED patterns to individual app notifications, you can't do so from within the glyph controls. Instead, you have to go into each individual app's notification settings, which is fussy and time-consuming. I've already discussed my troubles with the display's white balance, but I've also experienced some charging issues. Whether connected through wired or wireless, the phone struggles to keep a continuous charge, slipping in and out of the charging state, and in a few cases, completely stopping. It's not ideal when you're trying to charge overnight, and it's much worse when Nothing includes its own charger, requiring you to find out compatibility on your own. The good news is that the business promises 3 Android version updates for the phone, enough to get it through Android 13, 14, and 15, as well as a 4th year of security fixes. That doesn't quite equal Samsung's guarantee of 4 Android updates, which is still the best on the Android side, but it's better than most and should keep you from having to upgrade in 2 years. The Phone 1 is a near unqualified success as a phone. The only significant flaws are the restricted battery life and small bugs and glitches I've noticed, but the capable cameras, IP53 rating, and wireless charging all stand out from the crowd. That's even before we get to the design. Perhaps it will be contentious, but the Phone 1 is far from boring to look at, and the semi-transparent rear and LED patterns will eventually be the main reasons to consider purchasing the Phone 1. I'm less impressed as the initial step toward a smartphone revolution. Aside from the glowy pieces, there isn't much here that we haven't seen before, and once the novelty wears off, all you're left with is a phone like all the others. Making a great phone is difficult, but making a fantastic phone as your second product is incredible. Even if it's nothing remarkable, it's still a nice option.